Hey, GW coming to you live. Today I decided to review a movie that came out in 2012 called VHS. Now, a couple things about this film. It's an anthology picture. It spawned, as of this year, three sequels. Basically, they are. The whole movie is a concept of found footage VHS tapes that contain a horrific story. The first film that I just reviewed has a wraparound story like all the other ones do. Basically, um, there's a group of hooligans, derelicts, criminals, whatever you want to call them, that decide to break into a house and steal one VHS tape for a profit. When they do that, they come upon what you think is a dead body. And they start playing the tapes to figure out which one, is the one that they're supposed to steal. Contained in these tapes is first person point of view horror stories, short ones. The concept is pretty good, and it works very well, and very, very terrifying, actually. The directors of this picture, notice I said director, not directors, not director, are Adam Wingard, David Bricker, Ty West, that's my man right there. Get it. Glenn McQuaid, Joe Schwaberg, and looks like Radio Silence. Now, this film was put out by Magnet, and this film is very, very bloody, gory, creepy, and it's very, very cool. If you like first person horror films, I know a lot of people don't like them because you're taking the point of view of the camera shakes all over the place, and you're pretty much, some people can dig it, some people feel sick, but the story about the hooligans stealing the tape is the one story that goes around all the other ones. The first tape that they pop in deals with a group of kids who want to go get laid, who pick up hookers in a bar, and brings back one of them that is not what she appears to be, and the results are pretty much bloody and wicked, and I'm not going to ruin that surprise. There's another story on here. It's about. There's another story about a couple who go on vacation. They're videotaping their exploits on vacation, and I would say a betrayal / murder happens. And again, it's pretty unexpected. It comes out of left field, but that one you want to watch again, because it's really hard to piece together what actually goes on. One of the best stories is a group of kids go to a Halloween party, supposedly Halloween party, in an empty house. They come across I don't know if it's an exorcism or a sacrifice, but anyway, they inadvertently have to escape. And this is where the film's budget shines, actually, because that segment, the haunted house, is ridiculously overblown. The tension racks up, and you're pretty much in awe of what they did on an amateur budget. The story itself ends the film, which is pretty good. Now, the story before that is about a camping trip and a serial killer, but it's not your average serial killer. It again is pretty creepy, and this one is where the gore really, really comes out in full. I mean, you see snippets of it, but make no mistake, every story has its gore moments. So, the film itself works because like I said, it's everything. It's creepy, it's bloody, it's gory, and it does keep you on the edge of your seat. Now, the one thing that I do like about these stories, these point of view stories, is that when you play this movie or watch it, you become essentially a character. You become the last survivor, if you will. And you you really feel watching this, if you certainly get immersed in this film, that are a part of the picture. Like I said, this film was put out in 2012, and it did spawn a sequel, which I will review tomorrow. But a lot of people dismiss this because I know that it went to theaters for a little bit, but it was on demand first. That was one of the cool things about Magnet. They always put out things on demand before they put them in theaters. So this one sets the tone for the other three movies to follow. Now, I will tell you this. These stories are never boring. The wraparound story is never boring. There's always something unexpectedly horrifying that comes up. There's also a story, which I forgot, about a ghostly family that haunts a female's apartment. And it gets a little bit extreme. Because things happen in there. That's another one you're going to have to watch twice. All the actors from, let's see, who's even in here? Let's see. David Brackett, Ty West. So there's a lot of people in here. But they all do a really great job. And when you look at this film, this is something that took the concept of the Blair Witch first person and really added a lot of spice to it. And it really works. Now, Shudder does have VHS 94. It's the latest entry in this film. I have not watched it yet, but if it's anything like this one, you kind of fall in love with what these filmmakers and the directors have done with these stories. I mean, they're shot and they look like they could be shot in a day, these stories. And they're all professionally done. And honestly, for a horror film, it really works. Now, the other cool thing about this movie is, if you are a horror fan, Bloody Disgusting. You guys might know that website. It gives you all the horror news and everything like that. They actually, believe it or not, I think they produced this picture, or they helped direct it, because it is Magnet Films in association with Bloody Disgusting TV. So anything with the words bloody disgusting on it, they have a reputation as churning out good horror. So they actually did this one. And you can tell this is a very edgy, extreme R-rated piece of work. But the thing is it works, it's effective. And for 2012, when the first person point of view camera was being used frequently in horror movies such as Frankenstein's Army, Blair Witch, and then VHS, as well as Hardcore Henry, which I'm not even going to go into that. This film, I think, uses it the best, because the concept of first-person horror, I think, really took form in this film. Also, it works within the story because as you're watching it, you get to realize from one character's perspective how these terrifying situations went down. And if you guys have seen X, anything that Ty West does is very, very good, very bloody, very terrifying. And I didn't know until I looked at the cover that he had a directorial role in here, which is pretty awesome. So, if you're looking for something extreme, bloody, and you like the first-person found footage horror films, definitely give VHS a try. It's on Amazon for sale. I know Prime Day's coming up. It'll probably be even less. But it did spawn, like I said, 3 sequels, all of which we'll be looking at. VHS 2 has a hell of a story about a Japanese, I don't know if it's an academy or girls' school or whatever it is, but there was a giant monster in there. I remember seeing that movie on Shudder, and I remember going, "Whoa!" Like, it was crazy, you know. But if you miss this, you're missing some pretty good stuff. And like I said, the stories themselves, beyond the wraparound story, they're pretty short. They're less than a half hour each one, but they pack a lot of them, a lot of content in those stories. The wraparound story is very interesting because, like I said, I'm not going to ruin anything of this movie for you if you haven't seen it. But let's just say it really is creepy. Now, the one thing, too, that I just want to say is the cast, the main cast that's in the wraparound story, look like they had fun because these are a group of young punks that apparently, before they set off to steal this videotape, are working for one of those reality porn films where, you go up and, like, the girls gone wild, you get to see, they show you the topless and the bottomless and all that stuff. But they also videotape their juvenile crimes, such as breaking in, trespassing, smashing up lights in a building. And I think based on that, their just desserts come around pretty quick. The characters, the only thing I will say about the character arc is there's not really too many. You just know these guys are derelicts and criminals. You don't get to know them personally, so you don't get to know their motivations clearly. But, who cares? At some point something's going to happen to each one of them. And I'm not going to tell you what. So, based on that, VHS is definitely one of the most, I would say, blood-drenched horror, first-person horror films I've seen in a long time. And all the stories are filmed in such a way where they're not gimmicky or hokey. The first story, I think there's a 5-second spot where you go, okay, the effects aren't that great, but you're throwing caution to the wind because the storyline works for what happened. All I can say is if, this was a first time film for all these amateur directors, they did one hell of a job. And I think this is an underrated piece of horror, actually, because everybody says first person horror, the first thing you think of is Blair Witch. You don't say VHS, you say Blair Witch. So, okay. But I was really impressed. And the stories are pretty good. And the last story about the Halloween party, you will know where all the budget money went. And they have some really cool stuff happening in that third story, or the fourth story, guys. I'm not going to lie. Fourth or fifth, I lost count. But definitely worth checking out. And we'll be reviewing VHS 2 tomorrow. It's GW. Have a happy 4th of July. And may the rockets red glare.